All right, if you haven't done so, mute your line. Sergeant Smith, mute your line. And we're going to, today is our first staff circle for equity. How to talk about race and racism. We can't ignore the elephant in the classroom. We will continue to engage in these sessions throughout the year, and all sessions are open to the entire MSD of Wayne Township staff as we continue our journey towards equity for the benefit of our students, our families, our parents, and more importantly, for ourselves. Since March, we have been exposed to racial health inequities as we think about COVID, inequities in our criminal justice system, particularly in the area of law enforcement, racial inequities in unemployment, and let's not forget our system of inequity, the educational system. The reality is there is no system that is exempt from systemic racism. Our goal today is to help you, our colleagues, navigate the waters of talking about race and racism, not only with other staff, but also with students and parents. We have an awesome panel on today, so I want you all to help me welcome today's panel. As I call the panelists' names, if you all could wave, I don't know how everybody's Google Meet is set up, but if you just wave, that would be great. Dr. Butts, who is our superintendent of schools, Coach Don Carlisle, who is the head coach of Ben Davis Boys Basketball, Mr. William Escovel, who is our LAP parent liaison, Ms. Penny Gregory, who is the Assistant Director of Office of Special Services, Mr. Keelan Mark, Principal at Chapel Hill 7th and 8th Grade Center, Dr. Denisha Murph, who is the Principal at Westlake Elementary School, Sergeant Eugene Smith is our School Resource Officer at Ben Davis 9th Grade Center, Dr. Shania Suggs, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. Nathaniel Waterfield, who is a social studies teacher at Chapel Hill 7th and 8th Grade Center, and Mrs. Lindsay Way, who is the assistant principal at North Wayne Elementary School. So again, we thank all of our panelists for joining us on today. I'm going to start out just jumping right into the first question. And again, as we go through the questions, if you have comments, if you have questions that you would like to ask any of our panelists, please do so in the chat. And then when we finish up at the end, hopefully we will have time to revisit those questions. So our first question is going to be directed at both Dr. Butts and Dr. Suggs. And the question is, how is Wayne Township ensuring they hire and promote principled anti-racist administrators, certified staff, classified staff, etc., that will adopt, promote, and upload anti-racist policies in Wayne Township? So Dr. Butts, I'll give the floor to you, and then Dr. Suggs.
Well, first of all, Dr. Harris, thank you so much for putting this together. I know that this is something that you've been working on over the summer. I want to thank 134 people so far that are joining us, and of course, those that are going to watch this pre-recorded. It is certainly our pleasure to begin this journey or to continue this journey along our district equity team work and the work we've been doing, and of course, being responsive to what is happening across not only Indianapolis, but the state of Indiana and our country. So I'm gonna zip my lip for a minute because Dr. Suggs actually has been going through this work all summer long and over the last springtime, and then I'll come in and interject a few things after she's had a chance to speak.
Great, thank you, and yes, I'll echo Dr. Butts for all of you who have joined us today, and it's exciting that we're taking this step together to talk about really tough issues, but are very timely and important in our work and very important for the students we serve. So I believe the question was, how do we attract, how do we hire people who are about this work, and to ensure that equity is important and that we are bringing staff aboard who are going to be for the best interest of our students? And that's a great question. I'll talk about the elephant in the room, and that is an area that we can continue to grow. I believe when we interview now, we get at the heart of our staff. We ask about, how they feel about teaching and learning and the children. And this is what our district is made up of, and this is what we're proud of. And so how do you feel about working with all kinds of families and with students and an eclectic group of staff members who come together to do this work? So we have always, and this is my 28th year, so we have always come from that perspective when we recruit staff members, no matter the position. But where we have not been so specific is to really talk about equity and use the race word, and just say what we really want to know. And that is, do you believe in that equity work? And what does that look like to you? And have you had experience in doing that? As a team, I've been able to see some of your work in terms of the questions we should be asking staff. And at this point, we are going to begin to incorporate those messages in the interview protocol so that we're uniform across the district. And we are pulling that information, no matter the position, in the interview process so that we get the right people in Wayne Township who will serve our children.
Thank you, Dr. Suggs. And Dr. Harris, I know we've exceeded our 2 minutes, so I'll be brief. So, there's also a couple of other factors that we've had a chance to talk about as a cabinet over the summer and the end of the spring. And part of that is us having a culture in which there's a desire for people to come and teach here, to come and work here, to come and be administrators here. And we've had our own very difficult conversations within cabinet that Wayne has not always been welcoming of our teachers of color, of those who want to work with our population. And so we have to, in our own way, make sure that we are creating that culture. We are creating that environment in which it is safe, in which it is desirable to come work with our children and work in that space. Dr. Suggs mentioned a very key point that I don't want to gloss over. We introduce bias into our interview practices by our own nature. And so we have to be able to identify our own biases as those who are interviewing, and also the process that we are going through that may be eliminating some of our teachers because of the way in which we're going about it. And so we have to also be very intentional to redesign our interview process so that we are getting away from, and I don't know that we can say eliminating, but greatly reducing the bias that exists within that process so that we're not eliminating great people simply because of the way that we're doing that. So I'll just throw those couple add-ons into Dr. Suggs' response.
Okay, well, thank you both. Thank you. So you all have really talked to us about what you're doing at the district level in terms of getting to the root of who we even begin to hire into Wayne Township. So now let's look at the building. So this question is for 3 building level administrators. So Mr. Keelan Mark, principal at Chapel Hill, Dr. Murph, principal at Westlake, and Lindsay Way, who is the assistant principal at North Wayne. So each of you, if you could take 2 minutes or less to address these questions. As building level administrators, how do you encourage these conversations among staff and students in your building? And what is the role of building level leadership in ensuring that that is happening?
I think for me as a building level leader, it's important that these discussions about race and equity are a part of our professional learning. I don't think we can have a lot of separate professional learning opportunities that aren't grounded in this work. I personally believe that you can do a lot of best practices in your building to increase achievement, but if you don't really address bias, you're not going to have the results that you want, because those things still impact your expectations for students. And then also at the building level, it's important to have a team of people that are committed to this work. And so here we are focused this year on peer accountability. because the team shared that they know people won't say certain things in front of me as the administrator, but they may engage in those discussions amongst themselves. So they've designed a framework for how they want to hold each other accountable. And they shared it's important that we keep pushing this work because opting out of it is not an option. If we give people the chance to opt out, they're really not going to have those uncomfortable conversations that will take them to the next level to best serve all of our students and families. Next.
I think Dr. Murph definitely hit that, right on target there. The biggest thing is creating that safe place. So at North Wayne, we've talked about, in our staff meetings, creating that safe place where there's trust, but also time to reflect. So obviously, that's not an intimate conversation that you're having at a huge staff meeting, but maybe you're putting out there some questions that people can think about. And then while you're having grade level team meetings or you're with your district equity team from your building, you're able to dive a little deeper and have some conversations that then hopefully they can carry back to their team members and hold them accountable. So again, assuming that everyone is coming from a place where they want to learn and they want to grow. And then building on those, right? Having those tough conversations. No one wants to talk about it. People want to gloss over it. And when I say people, I mean white people. It's very easy for us to think, that's kind of tough. That's icky. That doesn't happen here. Rather than letting people share their experiences. Just because we didn't experience as a white person doesn't mean it's not true. Doesn't mean it didn't exist. It's just not our reality or our day-to-day life. So being able to create that safe place where we can learn from one another and grow from one another. And then that is taken into our classrooms and taught there.
I think for me, my role as a building leader and administrator is to, number one, be open with my feelings, but also others, and be open to disagreement because everyone doesn't think the same. Everyone doesn't believe the same. So just being open to having that part of the discussion, I think, is a good starting point. I think secondly, it's important for me to create the opportunities to have those discussions between staff members, students, teachers, you name it, and just give those opportunities for those things to happen. And then finally, I have to make it a priority. So it can't be a one-time thing. It can't be something that has happened and now you want to respond to it and then we move on. But it has to be, a priority in the building, number one. And then I think for our staff and students, I think our teachers, you have to see it in language arts. You have to see it in math lessons. You have to see these conversations, these activities. They have to start showing up in lessons that prompt student discussion, prompt teacher discussion. And when you have those things embedded in lessons, that includes your students, that includes your teachers, and then you begin to see, some of the results, some of the changes in values and conversations that you want to see.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you all. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to go to Mr. Nathaniel Waterfield, who is a teacher at Chapel Hill. And so, Mr. Waterfield, you have done some work with your students in this area. So my question to you, because some of our colleagues may have this question, how do you as a teacher moderate those conversations in class between students? And I want you to think about how do you moderate those discussions between students, even when there are opposing views. So for an example, Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. How do you facilitate those types of conversations with students?
Yeah, so I feel in my experience, there's really two ways to do this as a teacher, two ways you have to do this. There are preventative measures, preemptive measures that you're doing as a teacher to kind of mitigate negativity and racism in your classroom. And then there's also reactive measures that you have to take. So the preemptive ones, the first one is day one. Day one in your class with new students. On your syllabus, it needs to be clear. A rule of our classroom is that we are not making fun of each other for our race. We are not discriminating against one another for our religion or for ethnicity or other backgrounds. And explain why that is to you as a teacher why that matters and what the consequences will be if those things do happen. For me, I know as a white male, I've never been discriminated against, but I explain on day one to my students that as the brother of a man with cerebral palsy, as the brother of a sister who's adopted from South Korea, I did see discrimination against them growing up, and the way it just broke my heart, made me feel like people were telling me that the people I love most in my life are worthless, and that is why I do not tolerate that in my classroom. Room decor can be kind of pandering sometimes, can be a little weak, just the tip of the iceberg type thing, but other types of room decor and things really do signal to students, especially at-risk kiddos, you're welcome here. You are allowed here. I cherish you. I worry about you. I care about you. I've been told by students because of the way I look. A student told me point blank first year, I didn't know if you wanted me here. This is a Latino student. But because you put my flag up, I knew you wanted me here. Talk to students on day one about diversity for its own sake. What a blessing and what a miracle it is that our classrooms even exist, because in this country we know they wouldn't have existed even a generation ago. And still today, there's so many things that are trying to tear apart that diversity that we have in our classroom, and how it's really not us against us in this classroom. We're all on the same team here. Then the posture for the teachers, I think, is really important and preeminent. Be your authentic self. This is especially true for white teachers. Do not try to sound like your Black students, your Latino students. Do not, I thought about why white teachers do this, why they kind of try to sound like their students sometimes, and why it's so kind of cringy sometimes. And I think what it is they're trying to signal, like the room decor thing, hey, this is safe. Hey, I care about you, or I'm not threatening towards you. But what students hear is you're mocking me. You are mocking my culture. You're mocking who I am. And by the way, that's not even who you are to begin with. Along with that posture, understand you are not the expert. As the teacher, you are not the expert. As a white male teacher, not only with Black students, Latino students, but even with a lot of our white impoverished students in Wayne, me as a guy who grew up rich in a suburb, I don't know their experience and I am not the expert. So even if I myself make a mistake or have a mishap, which I have and I will have, we need to normalize apologizing to our children and making amends and building relationships with them, understanding I am not the expert. I can bring in articles, I can bring in historical stuff that maybe you don't know about yet, and we can discuss that, but I'm not the expert. The last thing is like reactive. Like I said, consequences have to be swift, and there always has to be a conversation afterwards. I had a young white student, male student, who made fun of a young lady from Thailand last year about her eyes. And the consequence, everything stops. My classroom stops. I'm addressing you. I'm giving you a consequence. I'm contacting your parents. But most importantly, afterwards, we were having that conversation. Me and that young white male student, me and that young Asian student, we're having a conversation where that white male student can understand why that was so wrong and how that hurt her so horribly. To go to your example question, Dr. Harris, I know I'm way over on time. The biggest thing with that is I think we assume sometimes that a lot of our white students know their history, know their racist history of white people, and I don't think they always do. So a first stop would be explaining why Black Lives Matter is different than All Lives Matter, or more important than, because here, I always make it as local as possible. I go to here in Marion, Indiana. We had a legal lynching in 1930. It's one of the most infamous pictures of a lynching. It's the one where you can see teenage white folks laughing and pointing up at Thomas Shipp and Abram Smith. Talk about the KKK in Indiana. Talk about, to make it more real to them and their age group, Tamir Rice. Talk about the fact that Breonna Taylor's killers are still not charged. All of this is why we focus on Black Lives Matter, because none of those atrocities, none of those mechanisms have ever been used against white lives in this country.
Okay.
So after you've done those preemptive things and those reactive things, you can have conversations like that.
All right, thank you. Now, one of the things you said, which leads me right into the question for Dr. Suggs, because this is this is a real concern. Of course, we always will have staff who simply do not want to have the conversation. They're perfectly fine with the elephant in the room. And then we have some staff that are willing to assert their thoughts, their opinions, their beliefs. So as our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, how can what a teacher says or does in your office? And I think that's a real question that I think sometimes keeps people from having these conversations. And the second part of that question, Dr. Suggs, is that what are some things teachers or administrators have to keep in mind when having these conversations, whether it be staff to staff, staff to students, or staff to parents?
I think I'm going to start there. The things we need to keep in mind is when we're talking about race and we're talking about equity is that everyone comes to the table at a different place. Now, that doesn't excuse behavior, but you certainly have to recognize that when you're working with your colleagues, or if you're in a position of leadership and have to provide that leadership, that we all come to this space from a different place. Now, I say that, but we also have to recognize we are in Wayne, and you come to that same classroom, into the same school district every day, and that doesn't change. The faces don't change. And so the conversations can be tough, but have to be had. And so then the question comes, how in the world would you end up in HR after a conversation, or if a comment is made that is egregious? And like the example Nathan gave was pretty serious. And to think that that might happen with an adult to a child, or an adult to another adult in our district, can be daunting to think about. But just like as he mentioned, it can't be ignored. And what I can tell you is that it has not been ignored. And unfortunately, we have had situations where we've had to meet with adults in HR to talk about an inappropriate comment. It does not align with our philosophy as a district, and there's school board policy that speaks to that says if what you're saying causes harm and doesn't align with our philosophy, in essence, maybe this is not the place for you, because this is who we are. So we've had to use that school board policy to take a strong stand with staff. It doesn't happen often, because I will tell you, I only know about what happens when I'm told. Right. And so I'm certain that at the building level, there are some incidents that may be occurring, and hopefully they're being worked through in some way. But that's why I'm not hearing about it. But if it comes to the level where it comes to my office, then it's pretty serious. And lots of things can happen as a result. And I will tell you, you're right. That's what makes people scared to share how they feel. They're afraid they'll end up here, or they might lose their job, or we have to create that safe space. And again, remember that people are coming from a different place. As long as what they're trying to learn and the things that they're sharing, they're not intentionally being hurtful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Again, if you have questions about anything that's been said so far, then please utilize the chat. I'm going to ask this next question to Sergeant Smith, excuse me, who is one of our SROs at Ben Davis 9th Grade Center. And so as we think about March, and I mentioned, we've seen a lot in terms of inequities, including in law enforcement. And a lot of our children, some of them may have had great experiences with law enforcement. Some of them, maybe not so much. But one thing we do know is that we all witnessed the death of George Floyd. You know, if you cut on the TV at all while we were away, then you saw that and you witnessed that. And since that time, more and more incidents through media, through social media, have come out to our attention. And so when students come back to school, some of them being directly impacted, some of them, you know, having those bad experiences with law enforcement. Sergeant Smith, can you tell us what are some intentional actions that SROs such as yourself can take to help students understand, and some of our parents when they pull up and see the police vehicle out there, that not all police officers are bad people, but also how can we as educators make your job a little bit easier in the building?
Well, I'm going on 10 years this October. And since I've been here, all I see is a rainbow, like the Skittles candy, just rainbow colors. And the things the SROs have to do is let the students know we're here for you to help you get your education, to teach you the right mannerism and not be negative about a lot of things I've been told about a lot of young Black males and some of the white males and females here in the 9th grade building. And I tell them, quit talking negative. Leave the negative activity behind you and keep with the positive. Positive income comes out with positive outcome. The other thing is that students have to understand our job, our position, and the teachers can help explain to them, hey, Officer Smith has a tough job. Sometimes when he's here, he has to leave from here and go to work on the streets because our department is shorthanded, IMPD. I go to work probably 2-3 nights on the streets from 4 p.m. to 9:30, and I run into some of the same students here on the west side, on the east side of town, or north side. And I'm like, what are you doing over here? Hey, Officer Smith, you cool, man. And I appreciate hearing that. And I tell them, when I take this uniform off, I'm just like you. People look at me as a civilian, not a policeman. Although a lot of people know who I am, regardless of uniform or not, because I try to give a rapport that I want you to think positive about me. All law enforcement are the same. Although we, on our department, is 1,600 members, we do have a lot of racism still going on. Okay, you have the legal right to call for a supervisor to come to that scene if you feel you're being wronged about whatever activity is going on. Our Department of Corrections system, when I checked into it, I've had females say, hey, brother. I said, yeah, we are brothers in God's eyes. Where's the Black men at? I said, if you look in Department of Corrections, 68% of them are the Black male population. Figure the rest of it out. We had to teach a lot of young males here in the 9th grade and throughout the high school period or the township period, the positive things. Talk to them about the dress, the way they dress and talk and everything. And if you look at society today, back when I went to school, there was no interracial dating going on. You look at all around now in the high schools, what do you see? Nothing but interracial dating. Now interracial marriages, interracial whatever. Teachers also, I think it'd be better for you to call a student to the side, talk to them or the group of them on a one-on-one basis, explain to them what the problem you see and what needs to be stopped and how you can help them be corrected on it. I do it sometime here in our lunchroom and take guys in the room that's doing something wrong. Guys, the whole table come go with me, let's go talk. They go and they laugh about it. I said, guys, I'm being serious. And at the end, we joking, shaking hands and having a good time. Just relax. And even sometimes I tell them, I love you. They think the wrong way about it when I say I love you. I said, later on in your life, when your mind mature more, you're gonna think back and say, that man really cared for me. He really was trying to help me get my education. The other thing I think is, I hear students here saying, I want to become a teacher. How do I do it? Hire some of your students that you find out want to be a teacher and let them follow a teacher with the internship. And we get some better results here. Black teachers hired, Hispanics, whatever race it may be. And I think it'll work well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Coach Carlisle, one of the things that I know that you've been a part of this work, and you hosted something very similar to what we're doing right now. I believe it was a town hall. I wasn't able to be a part of that. However, I heard it was excellent. So one of the questions that I have for you is, let me find it. Oh, here it is. So how did the event of this summer change you as a coach? And how do you encourage student athletes to use their platform?
First off, I want to say I appreciate everyone that you thought enough of me to bring me onto this platform. Because for the most part, I know a lot of people on here, but some people may not know me, I may not know them, and may not otherwise get the opportunity to socialize with me. We're not in the same building. But to the question, of course, yeah, there was an event that I had, and Dr. Butts and some other people came on, and we basically dealt with not just our students, but just students in general, because I invited a lot of people outside of Wayne Township or even Marion County to come in and join in the conversation with us. And I had 2 police officers, I had pastors, and I had just had other people to come and speak to what we're going through. And to the question, the events that happened in the summer, it just gave me an eye, to see that it made me more aware and with the spotlight of everything that's going on in our city, in our community, and in our world. A lot of the things, especially with race relations, dealing with race, like for me, I have a unique perspective only because I've been around the world, and it's not to boast, but I've been in different cultures. I've been in Europe. I lived in Europe for 12 years. I grew up in Hallville, and I have a unique perspective for our kids because I was one of the kids that from the West Side came and went to school at Ben Davis, were bussed in. And at that point in time, there was a big disparity within race. There was maybe 80-20. I may be off a little bit with the numbers, but all the kids that looked like me came from the same area that I came from. So now, with how our school's set up and with the population, I think it's more closer 33, something like that. And you see guys like me coming back and being able to give back and be able to give my experiences and talk about the things that I've had to deal with as a Black man, not necessarily just as an athlete, but as a student, as someone who lives in the community and from the community, and the things that I have overcome. So that's basically what that was about, and it gave a voice to like Sergeant Smith, the police that was able to come in and talk about things with the kids to just let them, make it home safely to their families. Just give them some information on things they can do and things that they shouldn't be doing. That will give them the opportunity just to make it home. Like I said, for me, it was just about making things. It's a big awareness. Everything was closed down and stopped with COVID-19, and everyone was just looking. Everyone was at home. Everyone had the opportunity to stop and really focus on things that we probably would just otherwise overlook it. Quite frankly, we were made to just stare at it, and there was nothing else that we could do. So for me, I think that myself in the position that I am, especially when you see the kids, our kids, especially my kids, I'm the basketball coach, and I would say 95% of my kids are African American. But they see athletes and they see people with a platform. Now, I'll get to part B of the question. There'll be opportunities for them to speak, and people will listen to them just because of who they are and the things that they'll be able to accomplish on the court. Basketball, outside of sports like football, a little bit more visible because we don't have help, and people can see your face and you can be able to interact with people on the court. It's a little different from football and those types of sports because you kind of separate it. But with basketball, you kind of right up on each other. You can hear the things that's being said on the court. You were able to touch the players. Like I said, you can see their face, so it makes them more personal. So I tell my guys, man, just make sure that you vocal about how and what you feeling. You have a unique perspective. You have a unique opportunity to be able to speak to people. Like I said, because you're more approachable, you're identifiable. And if I'm out in the street and someone, they may not know me personally, but they would know that I'm the head coach of Ben Davis because they're able to see me. And the same thing goes for the kids. So with that being said, that we have a greater responsibility to be able to articulate ourselves a certain way and to make sure that with the platform that they have, that they are using that to get the points that they want to get across. So, you know, as a Wayne Township, that to make sure that they talking in circles and talking in the ways that will make all of us proud, not necessarily just how they would want to talk with their friends. So as a platform, you know, just make sure that you are choosing your words wisely and that you are using that platform to show people who you are and not necessarily who they thought you would be. So that from my perspective, the events, we're all forced to look at it. We're all forced to take a step back, and for the platform for the kids, I just tell them just to make sure that you're using your platform and make sure that you're using it for the best result possible for you and your families.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that platform piece that he spoke of, Ms. Gregory, and, you know, being able to use their voice. One of the district initiatives in Wayne Township is SEL, social emotional learning, and the circles in which students gather together. And basically the classroom is their platform. That is a way for them to have a voice. So Ms. Gregory, can you tell us, with that being said, how might SEL look differently, particularly for this year, not coming off of, but still going through COVID, the Black Lives Matters, not sign, but they painted Black Lives Matter in the street downtown. So our students are coming to us with all of these things that they were forced to look at, is exactly what Coach Carlisle said. How might that look differently now for Black and Brown children in SEL?
So Dr. Harris, very good points. And I just want to say what an honor and privilege to be here today. Thank you so much, Dr. Harris, for your leadership and this opportunity to be here. This subject matter and what we're doing is life-changing work. And this is why I got into the business of education. So I just want to, really make a point of saying this is not just lip service or words. Everybody who took time today to be on here, this is what this work is really about when we talk about making a difference in our community and with children. So I want to backpedal just a little bit because I want to change our question from how might SEL be different for our Black and Brown children to how might SEL be different for our staff members and our teachers. Because I want to go back to Dr. Butts's point of examining your own bias. I think that's so important. So with anything you might want to implement in schools from a district level, building level, classroom level, it starts with you, the adult, right? So like the lens you're looking through, how do you look at the world? What do you bring to the table with your experiences, your pain, your prejudice, all of those things. And so I think if you start with you first, that's the biggest bang for your buck. And then from there, you can start examining, okay, what does this mean for kids of color coming back from such atrocities, really, and from mourning? All of us are in sort of a state of mourning, but I think particularly when you have the backdrop of COVID on top of the racial unrest, that is a level of stress that a lot of us have never been through before, including myself, who, is struggling through a lot of this. And so when we think about the SEL components, so self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, you want to really challenge yourself to center equity in that. So then if you're thinking about self-awareness, you should also be thinking about what does that mean as far as racial identities, right? And so then self-management, collective agency. And all these things that I'm talking about are rooted in Black and Brown communities. When you think about social awareness, you're thinking about centered and belonging. I think that Sergeant Smith talked about telling, you know, the young people that he loves them. He loves them. That's about relationship building. That's about connectivity. That's about belonging. Not, you know, you're not just trying to talk slang to make me feel like I belong here. You don't know the latest dance moves. All of those things are the tip of the iceberg. But the deeper things are, when I walk into your space, Mr. Whoever, Mrs. Whoever, I feel like I belong here. You want me here. Relationship skills are centered in collaboration. You're not telling me how to build relationships. You know, you're showing me collaboratively how to do that with my peers. And then finally, responsible decision making. Think about that in the lens of distributive justice. How do I have agency over my own consequences even? How can I have a voice in what goes on in this classroom? How do I really belong here? And so thinking about, you know, number one, examining you, dealing with you, regulating you, figuring out what you need. You can have Jesus and a therapist. It's okay. And then from there, talk to your students about their own experiences. And you know what? Call the thing the thing. Quit tap dancing around what's really happening. We talk about equity. We talk about educational justice. Let's talk about white supremacy. Let's talk about racism. So I would say be as authentic and real as you can be, just like Nate talked about earlier, and then center equity in your work.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I just really like the way that you outline all of those pieces that staff can take to make that happen, because this really is about us, you know, us doing the work, because at the end of the day, we serve children. Keyword, they're children. And it's us as adults to guide them and to be that voice, and not necessarily saying that our voice is the best voice, but to be that voice of reason, to bring to them different situations, to let them be able to have meaningful conversations about what is happening, and sometimes being able just to agree to disagree. But we have to model that and how to do that in a loving and kind way. So thank you for that, Ms. Gregory.
Ms. Harris, I want to add something to that. Just came to my mind. I remember my mom, when we was coming up, both parents in the home, told my sister and two brothers and I that she had thought in the bedroom one night after she scolded us and said she learned just from us saying, "Mom, you never let us talk." We have to let these students talk instead of just saying, "Shut up, sit down, be quiet." Yes, ask them to sit down, ask them to be quiet. Because even on the streets, I got adult men and women when I'm out there working, I say, "Be quiet, please." I had one guy that grew up, only thing he heard was profanity in his home, growing up as a 5-year-old up to man adulthood. And 40-year-old man sitting in my back seat waiting on the wagon to take him to jail. I turned around, looked at him and said, "I'm gonna ask you a question. What's more polite to you? Shut up or be quiet?" He paused and went, "Be quiet." Be quiet is more courteous, more polite. Instead of just shut up. He told me it sounded like he was being cursed at, but because that's what he heard.
Mm-hmm.
We have to change that thought pattern, the way we talk to these students.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, and just piggybacking on what Miss Gregory shared, because that is important. Language is everything.
Yes.
Language is everything. And that's one of the reasons after we went to the Undoing Racism training a couple of years back, they've changed the name now. We've really tried to make a conscious effort of not using the word minority. We're a minority school district, because what does minority mean? It means less than. So we communicate by the words that we say. So thank you for sharing that, the importance of language, and not shut up, but be quiet is a much more polite way to say that. So now I'm going to turn it over for our last question, and then we're going to see if we have any questions in the chat, and then each panelist will give a last word of 1 minute. Okay, so the last question is to William, and I'm going to ask one parent who has a child in Wayne Township. It could be Mr. Mark, Dr. Murph, or Mr. Mark, Dr. Murph, or Dr. Sugg. Each of them I know have children in the district or have had children in the district. So I want you to think about this question that I asked, and then one of you please answer it. But I'll start with you, Mr. Esquivel. How do we show parents our intentionality to dismantle systemic racism in Wayne Township?
Well, hi. I'm honored to be sharing with you this afternoon. We show our parents our intentionality by modulating all of our messages going home. I want to remind you that parents are exposed to all of our parent square messages. If you recorded a lesson, they are exposed to listening to that lesson. If you have a Zoom meeting or Google Meets meeting with your students, parents are exposed to the way that we are acting in those spaces. But most importantly, they have their kids' input. So I myself, I have 2 kids in Decatur Township, and I listen to them from, what they think about their teachers and what they think about their schools. And it is very important to me, actually, what they say and their opinions that they give to me related to any given topic. Now, it is important for when we try to dismantle this systemic racism to be just like everybody said before. We need to get to the point. And I myself, I felt very, very proud when Dr. Butts, back in June the 3rd, he sent out a parent square message to all staff and all parents in the township, outlining what is the positioning of Wayne Township in relationship with racism. Now, that was in regards of the national situation that was going on after the George Floyd killing. But everybody in the township was at that point aware, and all the parents had a clear understanding of what Wayne Township is all about. And they will be kind of expecting that, from every teacher, from every message that they either listen to or read to in the future. And it is a good thing, actually. Wayne Township, also Coach Carlisle said, we have a third Hispanic, third Black population. So that is a 60% of parents that feel that you're an ally when you share your thoughts with them in a way that they feel included. And I know for a fact, because I do deal with parents. That's the nature of my daily job, and I hear many good things about many teachers, great things about teachers, and sadly, maybe if one teacher was misunderstood, that is going to be a bummer. But that teacher is going to carry that stain as well. My son once told me about a teacher who actually was kind of borderline racist, and to this day, I if I hear the name of the teacher, the first thing that comes to mind would be that feedback that my son gave to me about the teacher. Maybe that teacher has moved on from that position, and has awoken in that area. But I still remember that very clearly. So we need to express with our kids, and call out everything. If we are in a meeting with many students and there is a situation that is going out of hand, the teacher has to address it at the moment. And if any parents are listening to that, they will see that we mean business, that we're trying actually to fix this problem, from in a real way.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Esquivel. And then just one parent, so Dr. Suggs, Dr. Murph, or Mr. Mark. Just one person, 2 minutes or less, please, because we're down to the last 8 minutes.
As a parent, I think what's important for me is that people took the time to hear the concerns that I had. We may have agreed to disagree, but they really valued how I came off when I advocated for my students. I think sometimes we miss the mark, and we like to think that we're the end all be all, and we're the educator, so we know best. But for me, I'm the parent and the educator, so that excuse was taken off the table. So I think what happens is, as educators, our job is to listen to our parents. We may not be able to come to 100% agreement, but if we develop a plan that keeps the kid as the center and the focus of what is really truly best for them, not how we believe the parent is, a helicopter parent, or not how they're being unrealistic about their child. We could be being unrealistic about the expectations they've set for their child. We could have set our expectations too low. And I know parents set their expectations high for their children, and they really want to know that we have their best interests at heart. And if a parent comes in and says they feel something is racist or discriminatory, we have an obligation to listen to them and think about what took place, and just remove that. Sometimes that lens that we have of when they say people are playing the race card, I absolutely despise that, because if you are not a person of color, don't ever use that phrase, because you don't know what it feels like to walk in those shoes. And so when a parent comes in, really think about what are they saying, and how can we create a situation that validates their child and validates their concerns. Because we have to understand, I love what Nathan said when he said normalize apologizing to children. We need to normalize apologizing to adults, because we mess up too. And our system is rampant with systemic racism throughout the system. It was created that way. It was created to have haves and have-nots, and we know who the haves were and who the have-nots were. And so we have to do that. And so as a parent, I want to be heard, and I want to be validated, and I want you to think about what is the best solution with the highest expectations for my kid, because you only have them for 1 year, so you don't really know all their potential. But as a parent, I know what they've come with since day one, and I see my kids as genius. They all have genius, and it needs to be cultivated in their particular area. Okay, I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you. Stay within your 2 minutes. Wonderful.
I know.
I don't think we have any questions in the chat. I've kind of been watching the chat. I know one question was submitted, and so we're going to spend some time kind of going over that question. So I will get back to the teacher who submitted that question. But what we're going to do for the last 5 minutes, panelists, hear me clearly, please. One, instead of save the last word, what is it? Is it say the last word? Say the last word. It's going to be say the last sentence. Give us one sentence to kind of end our session with for today. One sentence, please, so that we can end right at 4:30. So everybody just take a few seconds to think about your sentence that you want to leave our colleagues with. And so while you all are thinking, I again want to say thank you all for joining us. This session will be recorded, so it will be shared with you all. It will also go in the CIA Administrator update and in the Educator update. And please be on the lookout for more dates that will be coming throughout the year as we continue to have our staff circles for equity. All right, so here we go. I'm just going to go down the panelist list. Dr. Butts.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and what a powerful hour this was. I would just say, in order for this to be successful, in order for us to continue to move forward, we must all hold each other accountable. And I'm challenging every one of our employees this year to look at everything we do, everything we say, all the materials we utilize, all the policies that we have, all the practices that we have through a lens of equity. If we don't start looking at things through a lens of equity, then we will not change the systemic racism that exists even within our own organization.
Thank you. Coach Carlisle.
I'll just say, together we can. I think that it's going to be done. It'll have to be done by us as a whole and as a group. So together we can will be my sentence.
Thank you. Mr. Esquivel.
Yes, I just want to add that a self-evaluation every day is recommended, because this is a fight that we have every day, and one day we let down our guard and we can say something that can harm a child or a parent, and that can scar his life or her life, forever.
Thank you. Ms. Gregory.
I am going to leave you with this last sentence the same way my esteemed, beautiful sorority sister, Principal Terry Matthews, left her panel discussion a few weeks ago when she said, if you do not center equity in your SEL practice, then you are just promoting white supremacist culture with a hug.
Thank you. Mr. Mark.
My one sentence, I'll say it in two different ways. Number one, when the conversation ends, the work begins. And how I've learned that sentence, don't talk about it, be about it.
Thank you. Dr. Murph?
I would say that we need to allow children to bring their lived experiences into the classroom learning opportunities.
Thank you. Sergeant Smith?
I feel that this has occurred today and you put together is very well, and I appreciate being invited into it, and that we, like Dr. Buss said, we need to all stay accountable, not just the Wayne staff, the teachers and all, but us officers as well. Because like I said earlier, I tell the kids all the time I love them. I get called uncle, grandpa, papa, brother, sister, all that. So, and that makes me feel good. I'll get up in the morning, the first thing I do, I pray for the students on my way here.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Suggs?
Yes, in Wayne Township, I truly believe that we have the will and the expertise and the passion to do this equity work well, and now is the time.
Thank you. Mr. Waterfield?
I'll use a quote from Frederick Douglass. It is easier to build strong children than repair broken men. So we have an opportunity to build strong children. Let's not waste it.
Thank you. And Mrs. Lindsay Way?
I like to go back to the question, what is hate and what is hate and what is a lack of intelligence? You cannot fix a problem you do not know you have. So every institution must examine its own role in perpetuating inadvertently racist thinking and policies. We can't truly create equal opportunities for all until our institutions take specific actions to end that thinking and those policies.
Thank you. Again, thank you, panelists. Excellent job. Thank you, colleagues, for joining us on today. It has really been a pleasure. More sessions are coming. So just keep on keeping on. See you all later. Bye.